Good afternoon, everyone. I've seen that quite a few people have already joined us, and also I think standard operating procedure is now known because you're all putting your jobs in. So thank you very much. That's very helpful for me to know who is exactly joining us. As usual, we'll just wait a few minutes for everyone to get in. Okay, I'm just going to put the usual links that I normally do in my email address if you have any questions or want to get in contact for any reason. I've just put in my Twitter feed as I'm just going to try and keep people up to date in terms of anything relating to do with child trafficking. And I've put our email address as well. What I will also do is I'm just going to put in the links to the two pieces of research which I'm going to be referring to today. Great, got about half the people registered are in at the moment. I did this the other day as well, but just so you also have this information. I am putting in the links for the new statutory guidance, which came out maybe 2 weeks ago. It's a big document, 167 pages or so. So yeah, I hope you enjoy reading that. But if you're lucky, then maybe you'll be able to identify just small parts or sections of the statutory guidance that applies to your job. And I've also put in the link to the new NRM statistics, which came out last week, at the end of last week, I believe. So yeah. So in terms of the technical issues, which I'm sure are still present, I'm just going to publish a link to an article for the from the website, and we also have Raphael on our call today. He works for Webinar Ninja, so if you have any problems, then hopefully today he'll be able to assist you. Okay, so I'm sure that a fair amount of you would have joined us before. However, if you haven't, then I'm just going to do the same introduction. Apologies for those who have joined before. My name is Phil Spencer. I'm the Training and Practice Officer for ECPAT UK. I previously was a social worker. I've worked in child protection and in youth offending, and I've worked for anti-trafficking organisations outside of the UK as well. Today, we are going to be talking about ECPAT UK and missing persons research into victims of child trafficking who go missing from care. This is actually two pieces of research that we've done. This is very much just a look at the research. I'm going to touch on some other things as well, but just to be aware that this is usually a whole day's training that we run on safe accommodation and missing from care for child victims of trafficking. We have specifically designed courses for children's services staff, or whether you're working in a leave-in care team or a UAS team, and we also have an adapted course for foster carers and staff in care homes as well. So that's a full day training that we do. It's one of our best, I think, and it's also one of our most sought after. So this is just very much an introduction to that training. As usual before, I'm going to try and ignore the chat as I'm talking. The reason why is because when I look and read, I get put off by what I'm actually going to be saying. So it's not very professional of me. So apologies if I am ignoring you. If you have questions, there is a separate question tab So please write questions, and then at the end, I'm going to try and answer those questions. Whereas if you put it in the chat, then I might be missing that. And then apart from that, I'm aware that this sort of format is not particularly interactive. I try and make my training interactive normally. And what I've done today is I've just put in some polls. I've seen that a few people have seen them already. I can't exactly see where they are on your screen, but for me, it's underneath the slides next to where it says questions. There's a polls section. So we'll be giving you those answers, but it would be good just to, if people can contribute to them and just seeing what people's ideas are at the moment for missing care statistics. I am going to get going then. Can everyone see the slides so far? Yeah, okay. Haven't seen any no's yet. If you can't, then I believe you just need to press refresh, which is in the top right. Okay, but I'm going to get going then. So ECPAT UK, again, apologies if you've been here before. We're a small organisation. We focus solely on the issue of child trafficking, modern slavery and exploitation. We run a training program that's run by me, and we train various frontline professionals, whether they are police officers, social workers, children's services staff, or any other frontline workers. We have a research arm. Obviously we do, because we're going to be talking about some of our research that we've done today. And then we have a campaigning arm where we campaign around various issues that affect child victims of trafficking and unaccompanied and separated children in the UK. And then we also have a youth program. We have a boys group and a girls group, and each one of our young people is supported in a roundabout or in a wraparound way. We get them a guardian as well, and we assist them in as many ways as we can. If you are a London-based practitioner and you work with any suspected child victims of trafficking, then you can refer them to us, and they can take part in our programme. Apart from that, ECPAT UK is an international network. We're so far in 98 countries, I believe. So we're a broad network, and yeah, we each do something slightly different, but we work overall on child exploitation. Okay, so what is on the slide now is a quote from one of our young people. So when we were doing this research, as everything that we do at ECPAT, we try and be youth-led, and we have our young people who take part in our research. I'm going to read it out for you, although I'm sure that you have already started reading it. So, my experience in social services and foster care was very difficult. I had some foster carers which were nice, but some I did not like. I had different social workers who told me different things and promised me things that did not happen. I did not know what was going to happen from one day to the next. In my head, I thought I should go back to my madam. I was abused there, but I had managed to survive. Now I was so scared. I can see why young people run away to their trafficker. It is better the devil you know. I can see that some things are improving, but what is most important is that young people are made to feel safe. That is the most important thing. So it's sometimes some of these quotes from young people can make you feel quite deflated, and it's quite sad to read, really. I've highlighted in bold the most pertinent parts, I think, relating to why young people are going missing. It's something that we hear time and time again from our young people. Firstly is the uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen. And then the other thing as well that they pick up, or we've picked up, which isn't in this quote, is just the pressure, and the pressure from all these different processes which are happening. A young person will have an age assessment. They might have criminal justice proceedings. They will have their asylum proceedings. They will have their looked after review. They will have this, they'll have that. They'll have the pressure from not having very much money. They might be contacted by family members who are under pressure from the people who traffic them because of a debt. So there's a huge amount of pressure and so many sort of balls up in the air for these young people. And that often leads them to feel like the most sort of the best thing that they can do is go back to their trafficker. There's some certainty about what's happening there, and the draw of the trafficker is very strong. There are a lot of pull factors, whether it's pressure of debt, whether it's various other methods of control, and when you've got not very many reasons to keep you where you are at the moment, you do see young people returning to their trafficker. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce our two pieces of research. The first one was published in 2016, and it has data from 2015. And it basically, we did freedom of information requests for all 217 local authorities in the country. And we're trying to compile all the statistics we possibly could on child victims of trafficking and unaccompanied children seeking asylum and their rates of missing in the UK. Although it was known that young people from these particular groups were particularly vulnerable, and it was known that they have high rates of missing, this was the first sort of research that comprehensively collated all of the data and actually looked at how much more vulnerable or how much more likely it was that they would go missing compared to another child from another group who is also in care. And it did make a lot of it did have a lot of influence. We are aware of police initiatives that were started on the back of this. We were aware of sort of policy moves and changes in policy which were trying to happen, and this research was quoted and it was picked up in the media quite a lot at the time. And as I've already said, our partner charity was Missing People, who are a brilliant charity. And then what we did is 2 years later, we didn't just want to leave this research, we wanted to do this research again. So the aim was to do exactly the same methodology, and then use the same methodology to see what direction we're moving in, whether we've moved at all. And then what we found was that there was better identification of victims of trafficking. So those numbers were better. They were highlighted a lot more. But there was no real improvement in the rates of missing for victims of trafficking. However, if you just take London as an individual sort of entity, there was some movement in those statistics. And they were small, but they were statistically significant that there were some improvements in the missing rates for London. And then once again, it was in partnership with Missing People. So those were the two pieces of research that we did. We are regularly asked whether we can do this research again. We definitely want to, but the issue is resources. Even though people want us to do this research again, no one is funding us to do this research again. So we are very much interested in it, but we haven't updated it since 2018. So, no, I forgot to say. So now, if you haven't already, can you do the poll? So we have, first of all, the estimated rate of children missing for all children in care. So we have some numbers in there. And then we have the estimated rate for unaccompanied and separated children. They look largely similar. And then we have the estimated rate for missing for suspected child victims of trafficking. So I've just done some ballpark figures. I can see they're changing, so people are polling. Very good. And then, Yeah, the next question. Foreign national children go missing for shorter periods of time compared to British national children. That's one of the polls. Which nationality is most likely to go missing? And then the last the question was the average number of missing persons episodes for child victims of trafficking. To put it in a bit of context, I didn't have enough room to do this. For all children in care, the number is 3 or 3 point something. So just to give you in context, that's for all children. So I've asked there what you thought the average number of missing person episodes for a child victim of trafficking is. Okay, so we're seeing lots of movement, which is very interesting. Yeah, it's looking good. So thank you for taking part in that. Feel free to discuss on the open chat. I might not be paying too much attention to it. But yeah, I mean, there might be some surprises once we get moving forwards from that. So this was our research findings. Just the disclosure is obviously this is only as good as the data that we've been given from local authorities. Not all local authorities answered, and obviously that would be dependent on local authorities adequately identifying child victims of trafficking. But this is what we found. So we found that 27% of those identified as a child victim of trafficking had gone missing at some point. And then the number for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children was 15%. And then for all children in care, the number was 11%. So I'm sure that you would be surprised, as most people are, and as I was, in the low numbers of children going missing in general. I think as practitioners, we have an idea that a lot more children are going missing than they actually are. And that's because we usually are only referred to the most high-risk cases or dealing with those high-risk cases. It might be that those are the most complex cases that take up most of our time, and therefore those are the ones that we're aware of. However, there are a lot of children in care which do not go missing. And actually, yeah, the number that we came up with was 11% in the data that we got back from local authorities. Now, there could be that this number is underreported. It's highly likely that it is underreported. However, there's no reason why all children in care are more likely to have an underreported number compared to victims of trafficking. So I think we can be confident that the proportions are correct, even if there could be some underreporting. So we see that almost about 2.5 times more likely child victims of trafficking are likely to go missing compared to all children in care. So I think that's quite not necessarily surprising, but I think it's significant for us to think about. Maybe before this research was published, we had an idea that, yeah, child victims of trafficking are probably more likely to go missing, but we don't know by how much. But actually, they're 2.5 times more likely to go missing. And then even if you just take child victims of trafficking compared to unaccompanied children, they're almost double as likely to go missing than unaccompanied children as it is. So we do think that was significant, the proportions and the differences for child victims of trafficking. Yeah, that was significant. And then I think even more significant, if you look at the next one, was if you're looking at more long-term missing or more serious missing episodes, you've got, for all children in care, only 2% go missing for longer than a week. As soon as you get to child victims of trafficking, the number's 15 times as big. So not only are they more likely to go missing, but they're much more likely to have a missing episode that lasts longer than a week, which again is really significant, we think. And then finally, if you're looking at once a child does go missing, what's the average number of missing persons episodes they have? So it's 3.1 for all children in care. That's obviously an average. Some children will have lots and some will have 0. When you look at child victims of trafficking that more than doubles to 7.2. So again, these numbers are probably underreported, but the proportions are what's significant in this, we think. And then at the time of the research, when we got the information back in 2017 for the report we published in 2018, we found that 169 children had still not been found. So some of them could have only been missing for that last day. But actually, when you look through the data, quite a lot of these children are long-term missing. And for more than several months, we had not found these children. And again, it's a scary thought to think that there are just 169 children at that point of time, which were totally unaccounted for, and we just don't know where they are. So yeah, I'm just going to have a look what was on the chat. Yeah, so someone on the chat has just been mentioning how coronavirus has affected this. Yeah, so we can almost hear different things. In some ways, I think it's more, you know, we might speculate that missing persons episodes will go down, but we could also speculate that in some ways they might be going up. In this occasion, they're saying that they is more likely to go missing. Okay, so some more findings on the research. So child victims of trafficking are more likely to go missing, and the average, they go missing for longer periods of time. And even when you separate it out, British national children were more likely to have lots of regular missing persons episodes. And, you know, they might have been missing for several hours or up to a day. But foreign national children or third national children, if they're not EU, they were more likely to be missing for a long period of time. So in that way, then they would relatively have fewer missing persons episodes. I've already mentioned, so 20% of the child victims of trafficking were missing. So 169 sounds a lot, but when 1/5 of the whole cohort were missing at one time, that's again significant and quite worrying. And then this is probably not a surprise to many practitioners who have experience in this, but 62% of missing persons episodes were repeat episodes. So for me, that shows that there's a lot of opportunity for us. So only 38% of missing persons episodes are first occasions. Now, to me, that sounds like we have an opportunity. Once a young person has been found again, we have that opportunity to try and change something and make it something different, to try and prevent them going missing again. I also appreciate that people may hear that and say, well, actually, the repeat missing persons episodes, those young people are much more likely to have very complex cases. So you may not see that also as an opportunity like I do. And then what we also saw was a regional variation. So even though average was 7.2, one local authority alone reported that the average missing persons episodes for each of their trafficked children were 46. So again, huge variation and huge numbers are being talked about here. Obviously, this would change depending on the reporting practices of the local authority. How do they identify trafficked children, and how good are they at recording their missing persons episodes? But yeah, it's very, very large numbers are some of the numbers coming out of this research. More research findings we had. This did slightly change from the 2016 to 2018 research, but return home interviews are not being completed, or they weren't being done in a substantial way. I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but in our training, we do look at return home interviews and how these can be most useful, and thinking about who is most best place to be doing that with the young person. Sorry, someone's just asked about what child VOT means. So that's a child victim of trafficking. Sorry that I didn't make that clear. So something else that has come up, and not just in our research on missing episodes for child victims of trafficking, is generally the statistics show that within the first 48 hours is the highest risk of a young person going missing. And that is true. But if you look at it, if you're thinking about a graph, what you would see for the first 2 days is the risk of them going missing is very high. And then it slowly reduces as time goes on. But in other research, which I believe was done by the University of Bedfordshire, what you see is 6 months later, starts to be an increase in the numbers of the rates and the risks of a victim of trafficking going missing again. Now, they couldn't particularly explain for this in their research, but what their research didn't take into account was the age of the young person, because what we found in our research is that the closer a child gets to 17 and a half and 18, the more likely they are that they're going to be going missing. And the reason we think for that, and when interviewing young people, is if you're thinking about UASC leave that young people may get, their UASC leave will often run out at 17 and a half. So this young person may have been in care for several years. Their asylum case maybe is being delayed, or it's not going very well. They're losing confidence in their situation. Maybe criminal proceedings against them are proceeding. So they're getting nervous about that. So what you see is that 17 and a half to 18, children, the risk of them going missing does increase a lot as well. So we just wanted to highlight this in the way that if you are working with young people and they've been with you for 4 months and they haven't gone missing, you can be a little bit complacent and think, well, the highest risk is within the 48 hours and they've been with us for months. So they're low risk of going missing. So that could be true, but also think about what else is happening in their life, and the possibility that as they are getting older and their situation in the UK and their status in the UK is maybe increasingly precarious, the risk of them going missing can increase again. And then surprisingly, what was found was that practitioners really thought that training would be of value in this area. I think certain practitioners in this field can feel like they've been trained to death, and they receive too much training. But it was something that both professionals and carers would appreciate more training on, was around missing from care. So I've mentioned some of this, I believe. So for non-UK national children, those most likely to go missing were from Vietnam, Albania, and Afghanistan. So I believe in the polls, everyone got that reasonably right. So those are the top 3, apart from British nationals. And it's in that order. So the Vietnamese young people were more likely to go missing than any other. Albanian was after that, and then after that is children from Afghanistan. In all of those cases, people who were going missing were more likely to be male compared to female. That might not be that surprising. Seems the majority of our trafficked children from these countries are males as well. I've just seen a question. First 48 hours of what? Sorry, I wasn't probably very clear. Yes, it's about the first 48 hours of being in care. That was what our research found in terms of an unaccompanied child coming into the care system. So apart from that, yeah, different dynamics of different missing persons episode. Yes, that's right. The UK national young people, those who were identified as trafficked and those who were going missing, it was the opposite to non-UK nationals, and they were more likely to be girls. So again, you're just seeing different dynamics happening within different populations of young people. And then finally, the involvement of criminal proceedings heightens the risk of a young person going missing. So similar to what I was saying about the discretionary leave or UASC leave that a young person is getting, if a young person has other things such as criminal proceedings happening, then what we see in the statistics is that they are more likely to go missing as well. So this can look like quite a busy slide. I don't think we need to spend much time on it, but what we did in this research as well is that we interviewed professionals and we tried to look at what different professionals in their experience perceived as the most effective responses to try and prevent young people going missing. So as I said, surprisingly for us, actually training for professionals was the most was considered the most effective intervention to have. Specialist foster care, that came up very high, and that's also linked to the training on professionals. I think there's a huge opportunity if we're able to train a critical mass of foster carers who have this specialist knowledge. I think that can make a huge difference to the appropriateness of accommodation and the missing person episodes and the overall rates of young people going missing. Various other things are on there which you can have a look at. Yeah, I'll just give you a few more seconds to look over and then I'll move on. As I said, I just wanted to put it in there for a reference for you. I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Okay, so not too much more now. Just to really emphasize is that missing is an indicator of trafficking. Missing is a child protection concern in itself, but we shouldn't just think of it in that way. Is that if we have a possibility of a young person who could be trafficked or exploited, it is absolutely an indicator of trafficking. Okay. In lots of occasions, and when we've done case audits before, we've seen that it's not necessarily linked to trafficking, which it absolutely should be. Okay, challenging harmful narratives around missing children. This is important for our group of young people. We really need to take hold of this narrative, which whatever agency you are from, you are likely to be working in a multi-agency missing persons network. And when you're having those MISPA meetings and those strategy meetings, we need to think about how young people are being talked about, because that can really change the perceived risk around a young person. It can change the rating, the MISPA risk rating that they're considered on the police system. It can change our responses at all. We find it's very unhelpful and harmful when a young person is sort of described in the way of as an immigration absconder. Or they're absconding because they are running away from their criminal trial. We do hear these kind of narratives, and it's really important that as professionals, we do challenge those narratives and we just bring back to the focus that a child missing is a safeguarding issue, and it is not about their immigration status. It is not about their criminal status. The most important thing is the safeguarding, and that should be our primary focus in any sort of missing persons response. Something that was highlighted as well was the importance and the effectiveness of regional and national coordination. So when regional coordination does happen and is effective, missing rates do go down, and also missing person episodes are more likely to be shorter. And I think other papers are pointing to this as well. I know I mentioned it last week, but I think it's also pertinent here. To the Child C Shropshire Serious Case Review, that a lot of that serious case review was speaking about the lack of coordination between different missing persons teams and the impact that that had on that case. I do believe that, or possibly they are here, is one of the authors of that serious case review is on this call, on this webinar as well. Something else to mention as well is something that we don't think about very much is international cooperation. So as well as the research we're talking about here, we conducted research in 2019, which we called Interact, and that was also with Missing Children Europe, which is a sister organization of missing persons. And that looked at how on a European level we can coordinate together to try and get a hold of missing children. So I can't remember the years exactly. I think it was between 2014 and 2017. We believe that there are 30,000 non-EU national children missing somewhere in Europe that are unaccounted for. So I mentioned 169 earlier as being significant, but those are 30,000 children in Europe where we don't know where they are. So because of the lack of international coordination for missing children, it's possible that those missing children are safe in another country being looked after by the state. However, it's equally possible that those children are in the hands of people who are trafficking and exploiting them. The fact is because we don't coordinate on an international level, we don't actually know where they are. So this may not be relevant in all of your work, but I think when we look at safeguarding responses to missing children, we do often think about the response locally. We might also think about a regional or a national response. I think very infrequently do we think about international cooperation and reaching out to agencies in other countries to try and find missing children, and it's just something that we need to consider. And then something else which we've sort of noticed recently is that there is a hole in the statutory guidance around long-term missing and what should be happening with these. We're not sure really what's happening with that, but we do see that different local authorities appear to be making their own guidance on this, and they're doing things differently. So some local authorities are keeping young people open for a certain amount of time and then just closing the case. Other local authorities are keeping the case open until the child turns 18, but once a child turns 18 they're closing the case. So there's various different practices on this, and I think that definitely at a local authority level there needs to be some sort of clarity on what your organization is doing, but we're calling on a national guidance on what to do with long-term missing cases, because at the moment there's a lot of long-term missing cases of suspected child victims of trafficking and unaccompanied and separated children which have been closed or are inactive, and no one's doing anything about these, which is can be worrying. And then finally, just before taking some questions, I just wanted to also put this up. So these are some other quotes from young people which have we work with. So the first one said, "I've met so many different adults. I don't know who anyone is, and I don't know who I can trust. I liked my social worker, but then she left. She was always very cold and professional. I just wanted her to ask, 'Are you okay?'" Next one is, "We are nobody in this country. And he loves me and he buys me really nice presents. He says we're going to run away together. Nobody here cares about me anyway. They won't miss me." So this was a concern around child sexual exploitation. And this is what she's saying about, when we're openly talking to her about the risks, and this is her response. So again, very deflating, really. And then lastly, I have nothing to do. I can't go to college. I don't have any friends. I feel so alone. Um, so it is deflating to see them, but I do also see some opportunity here in what young people are saying. A lot of what young people are telling us, even though their cases might be highly complex, is why they're saying they're running away is not particularly complex. Just saying, I just want her to ask, are you okay? Um, Again, going back to the quote at the beginning, a lot of the message was, I want to feel safe and I want to feel wanted, or I want to feel cared for. And if I have that, then that's enough. It can be kind of cliched when people say about integration and getting a young person a social group and friends and things like that. But there is a reason why people say that if a young person is integrated into a community and into a network, then they are so much more likely to stay where they are. They're a lot less likely to sort of give in or be drawn by um, the pull factors and the attraction of a trafficker or someone who's exploiting them. I'm just having a little look on the chat. I'll let you have a little look there. Yeah, I think an interesting point there has been made about the difference in the risk assessment between local authority and police. Absolutely. So I think we do have some police on the call, on the webinar. I don't know what kind of teams they're in, if they can explain. But it's something which other practitioners often highlight, is that in those cases, they are considering these young people high risk. But for a missing person for a police unit, their their assessment of risk is very different. So all children will be classed as a medium risk, but to get to that other level of high risk, there has to be an imminent, I believe the threshold is imminent threat to life. So it's a very, very high threshold for someone to be high risk. And I feel like when we do this training in occasions, there's been a multi-agency group that I'm training, and there's social workers and police officers there. And I just think it's really useful for them to sit down together and understanding their different risk assessments. And I think it really does help when different agencies do understand why they're making those different risk assessments, just because they do work for different frameworks. So just to make that aware, you're aware of that. So at this point, I will take any questions. Just one other thing that I was going to mention in terms of missing persons and maybe different agencies, because we do have police here. Please, 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 if you have a young person who we're worried about exploitation, use trafficking markers for their P&C. I think they can be really important in when it comes through to a missing persons unit and they see that a young person has a trafficking marker. I think that can really help inform the risk level that young person is considered. Obviously, from our point of view, because of the field that we're working in and what we see from our young people, is that if a young person is considered or suspected as being a victim of trafficking, they should immediately be considered a high risk. I know that because of the police thresholds that they might not, police officers might not agree with this, but we do really want those trafficking markers to be used. And then if we do have practitioners who are not police but do work with police, then that could be something that you're asking police officers in the network about for a young person, is asking them if trafficking markers can be put on a young person's P&C, then that might be really useful. Okay, so I'm just going to go to questions. I'll give you a little bit more time. to write anything down that you want to. But apart from that, I'll just mention once again our training. We do have face-to-face training programs. We run them for individual practitioners in our central London offices. Obviously, that's not happening at the moment, but if you are interested, then please email me. And then we do most of our training is commission training, where we come into an organization and train your whole team. So these are the different courses that we've got. These aren't our only courses, but they are the main ones that we do have. So please get in contact with me if that's of interest to you. Apart from that, if you want to know more about child trafficking and you want to know more about the work we're doing, then you can visit our website. You can sign up to our news. You can support our campaigns.